Pay attention, everyone. They are already trying to rewrite history. They're trying to change the narrative, hoping that you won't see what they did, hoping that the vast majority of the people will forget all of the early speculation that was so wildly wrong, and all of the advice that was given based on that early speculation. They're already trying to scrub the internet of it and distract you with, well, let's just go forward now because looking back does no good. Trust me on this one. They are going to try to rewrite this entire narrative. Now, last night during my live session, somebody brought up Hurricane Andrew and how people have forgotten how destructive and damaging it was and how we should not give Ian so much credit for being so much worse. There's something that people miss between that time and now. It's technology. It's the ability to warn tens of millions of people with just a couple of keystrokes on a computer. Everybody has smartphones. Everybody has computers. Everybody has access to information 24/7, 365. That was not the case in 1992. People were still largely reading print newspapers for their information in 1992. Let me say this again. People were still largely reading print newspapers for their news. There was CNN, there was C-SPAN, there was, I'm not even sure if the Weather Channel was on at this point in 92. That hurricane was that big and did that amount of damage back then. If you took that level of comms and put it in 2022, this hurricane would have done orders of magnitude more damage, way more loss of life. People wouldn't have been able to get out of the way. Andrew hit at 5 o'clock in the morning when people were still sleeping. They knew a storm was coming, but they didn't have anything like the ability to look 5 days, 6 days, 8 days into the future. But there's even a bigger story on this. There's even a bigger story. Even with all that technology, they still got it wrong. And I just wanted to bring up a couple of pictures to maybe remind some people of what 92 was like. I'm sure there's people in my audience right now that don't even remember 1992. It was 30 years ago. So if you're under 30, you weren't even born yet. If you are under 40, you were basically just a kid. Ask people about what a car phone was. Most people model a car phone. What's a car phone? Well, you see, there were cell phones, and then there were these things called car phones that sat on the little hump that used to exist between the front driver's seat and the front passenger seat, where there used to be the axle that went back to the rear-wheel drive of the car that doesn't exist anymore. And this is what would sit there. And the dial pad was on the back. Merry Christmas, December 3, 1992. This is largely how documents were created. This is a word processor. Notice the giant hard disk, floppy disk, vertically mounted on the right here. This is a Brother word processor from 1992. This precedes computers. I mean, there were computers, but the way you made documents and created documents and moved them around was on paper. These were just machines. These were just glorified electronic typewriters. And I'm sure many of you might remember this. The Sony Trinitron XBR 80 or whatever. State-of-the-art TV, weighed almost 250 pounds. They literally had to sell it with a stand. And here's the killer. Even the biggest, nicest TVs in 1992 were, 27 inches? maybe 27-inch diagonal, 31 if you had a really big one. If you were one of these folks that had a true big screen TV, one of those giant projector deals, I mean, those were thousands and thousands of dollars, and to put them in a home was ridiculous because they didn't make any sense because you had to stand so far back away from them to even see a picture. This was the state of technology in 1992. 1992 was the first year that CDs outsold cassettes. 1992 was the first year that music on CD outsold cassettes. That's how far we've come. And this one should really blow your mind. This one's going to make any of my car guys out there, vehicle guys out there, just shudder. This is a 1991 stock Corvette. It came standard with 250 horsepower, 288 foot-pound torque. The next year they upgraded, 1992, it was upgraded to 300 horsepower and 355 foot-pounds of torque. Now, you ready for this? This is my personal 7-year-old grocery getter, glorified grocery getter on steroids, mid-range, good financial decision SUV. It has 288 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds. It was right in that range, somewhere between a 1992 and 1991 Corvette power and speed-wise. That's how far technology has come. My 7-year-old grocery getter would give a 91 Corvette, stock Corvette, a run for its money. That's the difference. You can't compare. And here's the specs if anybody cares, blah, blah, 3.6 liter V6. Denali, 288 horsepower, 270 foot-pounds of torque. They're rewriting history. This is AccuWeather. I got this in the lower left here. When Ian was down here, they had it going up over Apalachicola, over Atlanta, over western North Carolina, up into like Roanoke. Here is CBS 17 when it was down here. Basically the same thing. Wasn't going to be anywhere near the coast on a Wednesday. Heading up Panama City, be careful. You might get some. Same thing. Ian scenarios for New Jersey. One arrow over Tampa, another one Apalachicola, another one Mobile, swinging way out over Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. And then, of course, NPR, 27 September 2022. Predicting Hurricane Ian's track has been difficult, an expert tells us why. I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre. They're going to rewrite. This was the one. This was the only track that I saw at this time that even got remotely close. Remotely close. But even them, it's still wrong. They're going to try to rewrite history, and they're already changing the subject. Even with the hurricane, still a hurricane, hitting Charleston and hitting the Carolinas, Fox Live now from Fox has already changed the subject to NFL under pressure over Dolphins to a Tagovailoa, whatever, concussion concerns. They're already got it shifted back to sports. It's still a hurricane. It's still a hurricane and hitting 2 or 3 states right now, and they want everybody to change their mind. Well, it's time to just pick everything up and move on. Let's just brush under the rug how absolutely wrong we were this entire time and how it might have cost lives. But you just can't compare. I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that can probably show you much better comparisons of 1992 and 2022. They didn't have anywhere near the ability to warn people in real time. They just didn't have the logistical ability to prepare. All they could do is say, leave and head north. That's all they could have done at that time. And people could have either heeded the warning or not heeded the warning. But for example, if you were able to take our technology now and go back to 92 with modern technology, Andrew wouldn't have been nearly as bad or as destructive. Because they would have been able to get things out of the way, get people out of the way. They would have known. They would have known it in a much more detailed and specific way. So I'm not sure that you can ever compare the damage and what happens with hurricanes going back, even this many years. Simply because of modern technology and the ability to warn people. I just wish, basically, Fox hadn't warned people, hadn't started in their whole historic storm gonna hit Tampa narrative before they actually knew where it was going to hit. See, that was the big goof. They started to want to do all these profiles on Tampa and how Tampa hadn't suffered this and Tampa had never this and Tampa this. It was all about it's definitely going to hit Tampa. And the governor even said it 2 days ago. Covered it on the video. He even alluded to it again last night in his late press conference. How where this hit wasn't even on the mainstream media's radar until less than 24 hours before. But there's a lot to learn here, a lot to unpack, a lot to see, because it's not really a fair comparison. But anyway, once again, thoughts and prayers for those affected, those still in the line of fire up in the Carolinas. It's not over yet, but they're going to try to pretend it is. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.